to Accessibility 101, Canvas. My name is Valdis Bean, and I'll be taking you through this training today. Let's start with an overview of what you'll encounter in this training. First is to say this is a very high-level overview of things that you should be considering when making your course content accessible. We have further trainings on each of these topics that dive deeper into each of them to give you a good understanding of what it truly means to be accessible in that way. First, we'll start off with an intro to accessibility. Then we'll talk about fonts, color reliance, and color contrast. Then we'll talk about headings, alternative text, hyperlinks, Ally, and the Canvas Accessibility Checker. Then we'll talk about accessibility in Canvas Studio as well as CERT's accessibility services. Accessibility ensures that everyone can interact with your course content regardless of ability. Now, it's more necessary than ever to make your course content accessible. This training is designed to introduce you to accessibility-related terms and requirements, including the new Title II Digital Accessibility Requirements. Let's start with fonts. The default setting in the Rich Content Editor, or RCE, are already considered accessible. Your font size should be at least 12 points or above. It's generally recommended to stick with black for font color, but that doesn't mean you can't use color. What is color reliance? Color reliance means using hue, shade, tint, or tone as the sole means of conveying information, distinguishing content, or indicating an action. Color reliance can impact students with various visual disabilities. To give you an example of what color reliance is, let's look at this example syllabus section, where it says, see the list of class dates for the semester. The dates in red are our test dates. August 20th and September 10th are highlighted in red, but any student, whether they're blind, using a screen reader, or have any sort of color deficiencies, would not be able to access that information. This is color reliance. Now let's talk about color contrast. Color contrast is the difference in brightness between two colors. This image here shows us high contrast grayscale, low contrast grayscale, high contrast color, and low contrast color. The low contrast grayscale and color are much harder to see than the high contrast versions. The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG, were developed by the Worldwide Consortium, W3C. UNF's standard and goal for accessibility is the WCAG 2.1 AA standards. According to these standards, regular text must have a contrast ratio of at least 4.5 to 1 between the text and the background. Large text must have a contrast ratio of at least 3 to 1. Large text is defined as 14 point and bold or larger, or 18 point or larger. For graphics and interface components, a color contrast of at least 3 to 1 is required. A great tool to use for color contrast is WebAIM's Color Contrast Checker. In this checker, you can insert the hex value for both your text and your background, and it will give you the contrast ratio, and then compare it to WCAG guidelines so you can make sure you're in compliance. Here's an example of a color contrast issue. We have a peach text on a white background. I've plugged in the hex values for both the text and the background, and our contrast ratio is 1.54 to 1. So we fail normal text, large text, and graphical objects and user interface components when considering the WCAG AA standard. Now let's talk about headings. Headings provide the structure to your Canvas pages and documents. The Rich Content Editor allows headings to be coded easily using their heading formatting tool. Heading 1s are the titles of your pages. Your subheadings are heading 2, 3, and 4 in Canvas. To remember what heading to use, think of it as a list. For every subpart of a heading, you go up a heading number, like how you would if you were to indent for a list. All images embedded into your Canvas course pages need alt text or alternative text, or to be marked as decorative. Alternative text, or alt text, is a short description of the content of an image that is read aloud by a screen reader. Alt text should be 120 characters or less. Adding alt text to images in Canvas is easy. You can select the image embedded into your Canvas page, choose Image Options, and then add your alt text to the box, or mark the image as decorative. Then, when you hit done, the alt text will be added to your image. Now let's talk about hyperlinks. Professors often use links to articles in their Canvas pages. Links need to have descriptive hyperlinks, and they should not be pasted directly on the page. One of the main reasons why we say to use descriptive text rather than pasting links on pages is because a screen reader will encounter a link like this and read it to the user character by character. That takes a long time and doesn't exactly tell the user where exactly they're going. So when we use descriptive text, it tells the user where they're going, what lies on the other side, and doesn't read it to them character by character like the first one would. So for this link, instead of pasting it on a page, we could use descriptive text like, example, Canvas. How do I create a hyperlink in the rich content editor as an instructor? We know where we're going and we haven't been read character by character an entire raw link. Now let's talk about Ally. Ally is an integrated tool in Canvas to help make your pages and documents more accessible. Ally works based off a checklist of accessibility issues possible on a page or document, and then it utilizes gauges to show the accessibility score of that page or document. The dark green meter is 100% accessible, and that means that Ally does not detect any accessibility issues. So while that checklist doesn't encompass every accessibility issue possible, if you get the dark green meter, you can rest assured that your document is at least mostly, if not completely, accessible. The light green meter represents 67 to 99% accessible. And that means that the file is mostly accessible, but there are some accessibility issues that could be addressed, according to Ally's checklist. The orange meter means 34 to 66% accessible. This file is somewhat accessible, but it needs some major improvements so that we can get it to the light green or dark green meter. The red meter means 0 to 33% accessible, and that means that Ally has detected some major accessibility issues and that improvement is necessary for an accessible document. Now let's talk about the Canvas Accessibility Checker. This checker is a built-in tool in the rich content editor on Canvas pages. Like Ally, the Canvas Accessibility Checker analyzes page content for accessibility based on a checklist of accessibility issues. Now let's talk about accessibility in Canvas Studio. Captioning audio-visual content utilized in Canvas courses is essential to the overall accessibility of your course. Captions, in this case, can also be called closed captions, and they're time-synchronized text that reflects an audio track and can be read while watching visual content. When creating captions, it should be assumed that whoever is using them cannot hear the audio at all, and therefore, captions should include both the transcription of the spoken dialogue and other relevant sound effects. For example, if the video is of a student in a science lab and they drop a glass beaker, a relevant sound effect would be the breaking of glass. For user-uploaded videos, Canvas generates auto captions for this content. The auto-generated captions are at most 85% correct on their own, and they need to be reviewed for accuracy to be considered accessible. Canvas Studio makes it really easy to correct these auto-generated captions. CERT offers many accessibility services to faculty and instructors. For example, we offer captions and transcriptions, document remediation, and course review requests. We also offer assistance via email. Workshops and trainings can also be located on CERT's website. Zoom consultations with the Coordinator of Accessibility, me, are also available. This has been Accessibility 101, Canvas. My name is Val Despine, and thank you for your time today.